our land. Glorious and free. Got 2 songs going on. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
These are patriotic Canadians.
Oh my God!
You're now attacking different older people.
You guys are disgusting!
Look at the fucking news media. Look. Look. You coward! You sound
We have nowhere else to go.
My phone dropped.
Practicing
There.
I hope it wasn't.
Anybody with us? I see you shaking your head back there. You should be watching this. Take a lesson in courage.
Man, they declared this called the Crusade.
Cowards!
Nazi supporters.
General generation theory. Every generation. Law enforcement professionals, huh?
Oh, you got blown up in Afghanistan, eh? And these guys are going to arrest you and push you back when you serve for your country?
Right. You guys keep those mentions. Resign everybody else to serve them. Go for it.
I don't smoke. I'm dying. Children. You don't know my life. You don't know my struggle. I fought for my shit. I survived the worst. This is nothing.
Tell your boss to stop it, huh?
I've been
Follow
blown
the
up.
law.
Peace and love. And if
No
you think
respect
he
for
does,
human dignity
you're wrong.
whatsoever. We're not livestock to make rich boomers. All serial killers are boomers. I almost said that.
We love you all.
All they want is to be heard.
Take a second.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I need a minute.
You are not a serf.
I did surfing once.
We want to
oh
do
man, I
the
hurt myself there
SURF
too.
thing. No. You don't want to go SERF. That's
Oh,
what these
no,
guys
I-
want you to do. They want you to go SERF.
Oh,
Nuremberg 2, boys. Can't wait to see you there.
I don't want to be here.
You guys' grandchildren are going to be born
I'd much
into
rather be
debt,
home with my wife and kids.
owing a piece of their lives to the state. Everyone's going to be slaves. That's a wounded veteran! Yes! That's a wounded veteran! Yes, sir! That's a wounded warrior right there! They got a key on his fucking head! Back up! Back up! Back up! Back up!
Hold on, stop pushing.
Back up!
They kicked him in the leg.
Back up! Back up!
Hold on, stop pushing.
They kicked him in the leg. The RCR guy. They booted him. That was weird. There's the one. The one who booted him was this one. Kucher Lazon. He kicked the vet that had the wounded right leg. He kicked him right in the leg.
Oh, he's a greasy one.
This guy right here.
Kucher Lazon. He kicked
Hey, what's up, guys? Saw you kicking that wounded veteran while he was down there earlier. You guys are a bunch of thugs, huh? No, not at all. You want to keep the rich guys in power right now, huh? Soaking up all the wealth, buying up all those residential properties, turning the millennials into a bunch of permanent renters, reaching into the pockets of the unborn, deciding all future children to be born into serfdom. That's you guys. Abusing your citizens, huh? Just following orders, just like those guards at the ovens of Auschwitz. That's you. Right? You just do as you're told, right?
Moi, j'ai pas la même opinion.
These guys are getting in.
Hey, what's up, troops? This is Jeff Evely, Ops Sgt-Maj for Veterans for Freedom, back with you now, this 12th day of January 2023, for all the events that we're tracking out here in the freedom-loving Veterans for Freedom world. So we got a pretty good show lined up for us today. There's just all the usual craziness out there. So buckle up. We're going to dive right into it. Okay, here is our philosophy meme for the day. And you know what? I don't really know this guy, Jean de la Bruyere. This is just kind of one of those groups that I'm into on Facebook. They provide us with a few of those motivational memes and whatnot. So anyway, this says, life is a tragedy for those who feel and a comedy for those who think. So I find that that's very much in line with kind of the message that I'm trying to promote here. It's basically like, we got to stay frosty, guys. Okay. You can't let your emotions guide you in the battlefield. You got to stay frosty. You got to keep those emotions under control. And yeah, I mean, it's like a waterfall, right? The emotions are going to be there. They're always there. They're just kind of doing their thing, and they're trying to, it's like the animal inside you is crying out. It's trying to coerce you. It's all pleasure and pain, and it has everything to do with surviving in the ancestral environment in the wild, but it's not very healthy for us in a modern society, as Freud points out in Civilization and Its Discontents. The fact that we live in kind of like a zoo setting here is has everything to do with why we feel so much social anxiety. It's because, you know, this engine of anxiety is programmed to promote our survival in the wild, not so much for us to be healthy, happy, and working towards our self-actualization in a modern day society. So when you see all that stuff going on out there, and I know that there's a lot of stuff going on in the freedom movement right now, like a little bit of drama, you know, about between different activists and organizers and stuff like that. And, you know, I'm doing my best to just kind of say ride above it all and maybe just kind of catch what's going on here and there. But when you see this stuff going on, you can't take it personally. Okay. That's how it is when you're in the war. You're not going to save all the troops, and you're not going to save all the children. And if you want to be able to stay in the fight and be effective, keep your wits about you, then these are the kinds of harsh truths that you just kind of need to accept in order to be effective. Okay, so. And I had another one here. This is another Spinoza meme. It says, the highest activity of a human being can attain is learning for understanding, because to understand is to be free. And I find that this resonates very much with me. In my career, I was an aerospace telecommunications and information systems technician, which is just a squishy Air Force computer geek trade. And what I noticed, like, so widespread, like as soon as I hit the ground in my first posting there in Greenwood, Nova Scotia, was that very few people really understand the principles of the craft that we've all been trained in here. So what I always said is like, as people would say, oh, you need to forget about all that electronics theory and all that engineering stuff and blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, yeah, I don't know about that. I find that the first step towards solving a problem is to understand it. that's what I always did, is I just kind of dove into the books and the schematics. And if I wasn't quite understanding, I'd go back and study some more. Yeah, it's a very effective method. I don't know what else you're going to do. Like if you're faced with a problem, you can kind of Easter egg your way around it and guess. And that's what a lot of people do, is they go on the Easter egg hunt and they just kind of guess and guess until they get the right answer. But there's a method. You know, we've devised these methods over times, and if you're able to apply these methods, if you're able to approach a problem methodologically, then what you will find is that you're in a much better position to solve it once you understand it. And that's what I endeavor to do here on this podcast. Is I'm always trying to understand, you know, what the underlying causes are behind all of this. You know, I have a little fun highlighting the social trend that we see, that is, you know, Strauss-Howe generational theory. And this is why I say the boomers must be stopped. Yeah, I mean, this is one of these harsh truths that I just kind of came across in my quest to understand what was happening in the world. And so I try to promote that understanding in others. And for the most part, I'm finding that people are finding it to be helpful, although we do have our detractors. I have many, and they're usually boomers. Speaking of which, this was something that Drew was kind of sharing there. Some of our hate mail coming in. I don't know who this guy is, but the title says, Drew thinks I'm unworthy for V4F membership because I've never served in Afghanistan. Well, that's absurd. You know, off the top of my head, I'm going to say that most of us have not served in Afghanistan. I mean, I did personally, but yeah, I don't think that even a majority or a plurality maybe of the membership are necessarily Afghan veterans. And under the Veterans Charter, all you really need is to graduate basic training and be honorably released in order to be considered a veteran, at least in some, at least in terms of the Charter, and in terms of your access to benefits. But here's what this guy has to say. I was serving in one service battalion, Edmonton Garrison, when the war in Afghanistan started in February of 2002 with Roto Zero and with the NSE. I forget what that is. Might be National Security Element. But you are the OC for V4F. Get a grip of CSM evilly, as his conduct is unbecoming of a senior leader. Okay. So I thought this was pretty entertaining, so that's why I'm sharing it here. It says, you know, first of all, Drew, I mean, are we calling Drew the OC? I thought he was just kind of the leader, or, you know, and CSM, that's a camp sergeant major. So V4F is not a camp. It's just, it's a volunteer organization. I gave myself the label of Ops Sergeant Major because I've been the one kind of advocating for this idea that what we need to do at this point in time is to step into that ideological battle space, because that's where the war is, and that's what I'm trying to do with this podcast, is step into that space and try to give you know, a veterans for freedom perspective on things, or a veterans perspective on things. And I throw my opinion in there quite a bit and try to be explicit when I am doing so. But I digress. You know, I'm not going to stand here and defend myself to every one of these jokers. But he says, get a grip of CSM evilly, as his conduct is unbecoming of a senior leader. Okay, so Drew's not my boss. I don't get a salary. This is all volunteer, and this guy can't stop me from saying anything. The fact of the matter is, like, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, no matter, you know, whether I have the V4F flag behind me or not. I mean, I want to have it there. Obviously, this is the gig that I've chosen for myself, and I'm eternally grateful for everybody for supporting me. Yeah, these guys are kind of stuck in this mindset that they've been in their entire lives in the military, where it's just kind of this gang, and you got to go along with whatever the gang leader says, or we're going to hurt you. And I get a really big kick out of this because I still see it all the time. Conduct unbecoming. Yeah, whatever, man. You want to talk about senior leadership? Okay, here's the real policy. So this is what I'm always talking about. These guys, this guy, by the way, I'm not showing all of the correspondence here, but he's very mad at me for going after the boomers. You know, and I've said before, of course, it's not everybody. That's ridiculous. This is a social trend, not a social rule. We have some good ones among us here at V4F. and you know, and elsewhere. And I point to people like Christopher Hitchens, Donald Trump, Jordan Peterson as examples of good boomers that we got to be looking out for. The boomers that are on our side that want other generations to have wealth other than the boomers. Anyway, so this joker, who's probably been in the military since Christ was corporal. You know, he never had a job in high school. I'm going to venture a guess and say that he never had any job before he joined the military, because that is the case by and large across the boomer generation. Is they didn't work while they were in high school, and you know, tuition rates were low interest student loans. You could pay for your college with a part-time job or even just summer employment, planting trees, that kind of thing. So they had a really easy go when they were coming up, you know, just kind of riding on the coattails of the generations going up ahead of them, who wanted a brighter future for the generations coming up behind them. The rest of us, though, you know, we have to come up behind the boomer generation, and they've just been hoarding wealth and power and engaging in, you know, fraudulent market practices and antitrust monopolies like Bill Gates. You know, so anyway, I can go on quite a bit for this, but here we have conduct to the prejudice of good order and discipline. So what this guy is saying here back here is that my conduct is unbecoming. That's some kind of an old charge that I don't know. I never really had to, I never saw it applied, I don't think, in my career. If they didn't get rid of it before I first joined, then it was soon after that. So conduct unbecoming means I don't like something you said. I'm the gang leader, therefore I'm going to hurt you. And the real NDA 129, so this is the National Defense Act, Section 129. It's conduct to the prejudice of good order and discipline. Prejudicing good order and discipline. 1, any act, conduct, disorder, or neglect to the prejudice of good order and discipline is an offense, and every person convicted thereof is liable to dismissal with disgrace from his or her majesty's service or to a less punishment. It's conduct to the prejudice. It's not conduct unbecoming, because unbecoming is in the eye of the beholder, and this is the kind of a lot of the kind of updates that we need to do to policy are just for that sort of reason, is that they're so broad that the people in charge, they're just absolutely wide open to abuse by the people in charge. But, you know, these guys, they like that stuff because it's their gang, and it has been since the early 90s. Offense and contraventions prejudicial to the good order and discipline. 2, an act or omission constituting an offense under Section 72 or a contravention by any person of A, any of the provisions of this act; B, any regulations, orders, or instructions published for the general information and guidance of the Canadian forces or any part thereof, or any general garrison unit, station, standing, local, or other orders. Is an act, conduct, disorder, or neglect to the prejudice of good order and discipline. Attempts to commit offenses. 3, an attempt to commit any offense prescribed in Section 73 to 128 is an act. So these are actual, you know, these are actual things laid out in the sections of the National Defense Act. You know, if you go against any of this, then that is an act, conduct, disorder, or neglect to the prejudice of good order and discipline. They can kind of tack this on with some other stuff. Sometimes, not really always. Saving provision. Nothing in subsection sub 2 or 3 affects the generality of subsection 1. So it is a very broadly applied policy. No person may be charged under this section with any offense for which a special provision is made under Section 73 to 128, but the conviction of a person so charged is not invalid by reason only if the charge being contravention is the subsection, unless it appears that an injustice has been done to the person charged by the reason of the contravention. Okay, so this is a lot of gobbledygook here at this point. But as you can see, this is a very broad thing, and it has to do with so it's a contravention by any person. So if you violate the act, any regulations, order, or instructions published by the general information and guidance of the Canadian Armed Forces, or any part thereof. So I mean, right off the bat, it's QRNO 1914. It says, you know, that if you say anything we don't like, then we can charge you. I don't know that really sticks very often if it gets in front of a judge. I think it's one of those things that they just left on the books to keep people scared. And QRNO 1936 says, you know, that I can't really comment on military matters or on matters before the Canadian government. But that's if you're a Canadian Armed Forces member. So I'm not a Canadian Armed Forces member anymore, and I have a lot of criticisms with respect to the military itself, so-called, at this moment in time, especially in terms of how socially abusive it's become towards the people that are getting in now, and the people that have been there for years, that they all just illegally fired for their unwillingness to participate in the clinical trial of the GMO jab, and now they're bringing in non-citizens to fill the ranks and indoctrinating them into a communist worldview. So if pointing to these alarming trends is somehow prejudices the good order and discipline of the Canadian Armed Forces, I'm still not going to be guilty of anything here because I'm not in the Canadian Armed Forces. So, local orders, disorder. Okay, so blah, 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 blah. So anyway, I am making the argument right now, and I have been for a long time, that it's not me, my entire career, in fact, it's not me that has the bad attitude. It's the people in charge. Okay, if you go back and you look at the report that the Commission into Somalia issued, you will see that they were given orders to effect cultural change, that the kinds of problematic cultural trends that they observed especially in the officer corps at that time, was that they tended to blame the lower ranks. They had a lot of contempt for the lower ranks. So they blamed them for their failed leadership. And that is true to this day. So they haven't affected that cultural change. They're still scapegoating the lower ranks for all of the sexual miscreants that the boomers engaged in back in the 90s. And also the other things that they said were that they lied and lied and lied and lied. They would say anything just to get what they wanted to the commission, and that is still true. And they were ordered to stop engaging in what we call the bun toss, which is when they all vote for their favorite guy and then give him the favorite guy score that's going to get the favorite guy the promotion, instead of following the process that was handed to them in the wake of Somalia. And they were told, no, you may not run Canada's military like it's your own personal little street gang. You shall follow this Canadian Forces personnel appraisal system process. And they never did it. I mean, I think it's gone now. They were just getting rid of it like my last year in there. And the entire time I was there, they were like, oh, the system doesn't work. It's the system. The SIF pass doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's a perfectly workable solution. I've seen it work in the early 2000s. It all fell apart somewhere around 2008 to 2010, which is right about when we're entering into the fourth turning, the crisis era that lasts for a generation, about 22 years, according to Strauss-Howe generational theory. So the standard would be about 2008 to 2030 for the United States. I have some sense that maybe we're a couple of years behind the United States, so it might be more like 2010 to 2032 for us. But yeah, this is the kind of stuff that I think we're kind of up against out there. And it is that generation, the boomer generation, in my observations, in my overwhelming experience. I've seen the difference. I've been behind closed doors, and you can cite policy. I can go to the books. I can show you chapter and verse. I can put that in front of a boomer lieutenant colonel, and he won't understand. He'll think that I have an attitude problem, and he'll say, okay, well, I'm going to make some calls, because that's what they do. They don't go to the books at all. They just start calling all their buddies until they find somebody who's willing to tell them what to do. And then, my CO will bring me back in the office and say, oh, I talked to the formation chief, and the formation chief says, this is the way they do it at the VCDS board. And I'm like, yeah, okay, but is that right? Are they allowed to do it that way at the VCDS board? Because I'm showing you the rule right here that says that they're not. And they won't understand that. They just don't get it. They still think that it's like an attitude problem. But really, it's them. They're not following their own orders, and they expect total fealty from the other generations coming in now with respect to their orders. You follow their orders to the letter. If they say jump, you say how high, and don't ever ask them when they're going to start following their orders. So that's why I talk about this stuff because I want to see good order and discipline returned to the Canadian Armed Forces. So conduct unbecoming, I don't care if you don't like it. I really don't. Like I said, it's not about the feelings. It's not about your butt hurt. At this time, there are much greater principles at stake than this. And I would expect any kind of purported senior leader. I think this guy said he retired as a warrant officer. And, you know, if you've got like 3 or 4 decades, that's not an accomplishment. At least it's not impressive. And yeah, as you can see, he has a very low understanding of the policies and the rules that actually govern good order and discipline in the Canadian Armed Forces. He thinks it's just I have to like you, or you're not a good soldier. So I'm not a camp sergeant major. It's not conduct to the order. It's not conduct unbecoming. It's to the prejudice of good order and discipline. This is what you're up against in the Canadian Armed Forces. It's a bunch of thugs, effectively, who just do whatever the hell they want and take their buddies with them to the top, and they will disregard everything about their ethics program that they were given in the wake of Somalia, everything about their evaluation system for promotion that they were given in the wake of Somalia, they keep ordering us to effect cultural change when they never effected the cultural change that they were ordered to effect in the wake of Somalia. And I heard what they were saying. I got in 2001 before 9/11 hit, about 8 months before, and that's what they were saying. Is they're like, oh, Canadians just don't understand what it's really like in other countries. And I remember I was like, what is it about other countries that makes it okay to rape, torture, and kill children? They're not really children over there. A 16-year-old it's a grown man in Somalia. He actually had 2 kids. And I'm like, yeah, that makes it worse. You think that makes it better, but it makes it worse. So that's the kind of backward attitude that you're dealing with at the highest level of the CAF right now. It's a very sad state of affairs, but it's only temporary, folks. It's just a blip in our history, and all we got to do is get those boomers out of the way and get our institutions back, and then we can start running them professionally again for the first time in my lifetime. Okay, so here's Dontarius versus Ukraine. He's part of the title here today. I'm not going to show the whole video here, but this is Alex Stein, number 99. He's been very effective, I think, in the ideological battle space. He's a very funny guy, and well, I'll just let this go for you.
You don't want to give him any money? Give me some of that Ukraine money. So
okay, so that's basically the best part. The best clip of the whole thing here is Dontarius is, I don't know if this is a real homeless guy or if it's just a character that's coming around with Alex Stein here. But here we have this obvious, smug libtard who thinks he's better than everybody. And anyway, this is pretty great. Let's just see, how good a man this guy really is.
You don't want to give him any money? Give me some of that Ukraine money.
Give me some of that Ukraine money.
So you want America to send more money to Ukraine? What about this homeless man, my wife's boyfriend?
I need help.
Don't you think he needs help?
I need help.
This is a rally in support of Ukraine.
Yeah, but what about the homeless people right here in America?
We have problems in America.
Don't you think $100 billion to Ukraine is a lot?
In this case, I'm simply asking this of Congress. Are you asking Congress for this?
Yeah, I think they should help the homeless instead of giving hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine.
Putin has been threatening to attack other countries, including the United States.
Do you have any money? Do you want to give him any money? You don't want to give him any money?
Give me some of that Ukraine money.
I'm someone who attends these rallies every day.
But he's struggling. He's struggling right now. He's actually struggling.
Right.
He's probably the homeless problem is worse here in America than it is in Ukraine.
That's because the Ukraine's being actively bombarded by Russia, which means that in many cases, if people lose their house, it is because the Russians blew up their house.
Yeah, but he doesn't have a house. What about the people here in America that don't have a house? We don't want. That's what I'm saying. We don't want to give it all to the Ukraine. We have homeless people here, right here, Dontarius. Citizen, he's struggling. This is my wife's boyfriend, Dontarius.
I don't want 10 children down the block.
You don't think it's important that we help him?
Help home first. USA, USA, USA.
Mommy, don't you guys think we should help American citizens? Dontarius, they don't want to help you. They don't.
Help America first.
Okay, Dontarius. Do you have any money for them? Guys, they want to give more money to the Ukraine than America. It's sad. It's sad.
All right. So check out Alex on Facebook there. Alex Stein, number 99. So, or not Facebook, but Twitter. Yeah, Facebook is evil. Twitter is less evil now that Elon Musk is in charge. I'm still kind of seeing some indications, like people are still complaining about some censorship, and I find that there are more cam girls and bots on Twitter now than there were before. So that's probably a little bit of pain that we got to go to, for a little bit of short-term pain for long-term gain that we got to go through here. It's going to take a little bit of time to get it where it should be, but it's well on its way. So check out Alex Stein. Okay, here's the real Andy Lee, and she has been an absolute titan in the fight for freedom here. She's an excellent reporter in Canada, and she says, "Can someone explain to me why taxpayers collectively paid the Bank of China, the Diplomatic Service Bureau in Shanghai, and the Service of Foreign Establishments in Guangdong over $15 million last year for consulting temporary staffing solutions for Global Affairs Canada?" Yeah, I can just imagine the kind of advice that they got too. So temporary staffing solutions probably includes hiring non-citizens to replace the non-genetically modified people who were fired. So this is a pretty strong indicator as to what's really going on in the government of Canada. And we had the Sidewinder report come out back in the 90s there that showed the Chinese were doing everything they could to subvert us. Basically, they're bribing, blackmailing, they're installing their people in key positions, opening the we let them open these Confucius Institutes all over the place. And now we have like Donald Trump under his administration. I can remember them closing one of them because, yeah, they were engaged in espionage. They're blackmailing their students. They're using their students' family ties back home to coerce them into doing things for the CCP. And here we have it right here. That Global Affairs is very much in bed with some shady Chinese front corporations in coming up with solutions for Canadians in terms of how we are governed. So that's not good. Okay, and here's the Globe and Fail. I was surprised to see this, but it says the conspiracy to inflate food prices is real. It's time to rethink supply management. So I haven't gone through the whole thing yet, but let's give this a dive and see what they got to say here. So the Globe and Mail has uncovered wide-ranging conspiracy to inflate food prices, a dastardly scheme that has driven up the costs of basic groceries, even as inflation pinches household budgets. Even worse, this plot has existed for decades, enriching the conspirators at the expense of Canadian families year upon year. We speak, of course, of agricultural supply management and its, quote, marketing boards, close quote, whose aims are not so much about marketing as they are to constrain supply, to dampen innovation and competition, and to keep prices elevated. So this is something Maxime Bernier has been talking about with supply management for years now, especially the dairy cartels, who they will dump out all kinds of milk, for example, just to keep those prices high for Canadians, and they won't allow any, we have a free trade agreement with the United States, and they won't allow any of their dairy farmers to sell their products here, even though it would be better for Canadians because we would get lower prices. We need competition to keep those prices low. And right now we have a government-backed monopoly on our food. Okay, so there have been lots of conspiracy theories swirling around of late, but about what is behind the increase in food prices, which have outpaced the general rate of inflation. The leader of the NDP, for instance, remains convinced, without citing anything approaching solid proof, that corporate greed, so-called greed inflation, is the culprit. The House of Commons Agricultural Committee is busily digging into the issue, calling grocery industry executives for a grilling in December. Absent from the invitee list was anyone from, say, the Canadian Dairy Commission, who might be able to give a detailed explanation to Canadians as to why it felt the need to raise its benchmark price 3 times in 12 months. So that's what they're going to do, is they're going to blame corporations, because that's what the left does, is they attack all the strong people and try to tear them down. So they attack wealth generators like wealthy businessmen, and I see this kind of stigmatization of the wealthy in the broader culture, people going after Elon Musk for saying, well, he's a billionaire, so he's like one of them. And I'm like, well, that's not really the case. I think we've just been through a period where the billionaires like Bill Gates got that way by engaging in anti-competitive behaviors and acting like gangsters. But I don't really see that when it comes to Elon Musk. I think he's just rich, and he actually contributes immensely in terms of technological innovation, whereas Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, that's all they ever really did, was just socially abuse a bunch of nerds to get what they wanted. And I mean, I was an IT project manager for the last 10 years of my career. I could have abused a bunch of nerds too. It's not a hard thing to do, but that's not how you get the best out of people. Okay, so politicians of all partisan stripes are quite studiously averting their attention from any scrutiny of supply management. It's unsurprising, but still disappointing, that no party is willing to challenge the entrenched interests of farmers benefiting from supply management. The media, too, is myopic for the most part, as evidenced by the recent ruffled feathers over eye-popping prices for chicken. A host of possible reasons were cited, price gouging chief among them. Nowhere was there a mention of a supply management system that props up poultry prices. But a stroll through the recent inflation statistics reveals some interesting patterns. The price of fresh or frozen chicken purchased in stores, for one example, rose 10.8% last year through December, slightly higher than the overall inflation rate of food purchases in store, 10.6%. Dairy product prices in stores rose even more, jumping 11.8%. Egg prices rose 19%. All of those supply-managed foods outpaced the general rise of inflation of 6.9% for that time period. I think that's a pretty valid point, but these food monopolies, we got to break them up. They got to go. But at the same time, they've been around a lot longer than this crisis. So, forgive me if I'm not convinced that they are the sole contributing factor, or even the main contributing factor here. Of course, I think we all understand that this is part of the economic prong of the attack on Canada. From our shadowy adversaries, presumably the Chinese, to weaken us as a society, because that's what Sun Tzu said was the supreme art of war, was to subdue the enemy without fighting. So this is the war. It's on our food. It's on all of the things that we need to survive, keep us safe and independent, and weaken us as a society, and turn us into dependent livestock for the state and Big Pharma. By contrast, pork prices actually fell slightly over the first 11 months of last year. That's not just a matter of timing. Pork prices have also have not kept pace with inflation since the disruptive arrival of the pandemic in early 2020. Egg prices, meanwhile, have risen by more than double the general inflation rate over the same span. So it's not the pandemic, it's the measures that are doing this. It's the public policy. It was never the virus. It doesn't necessarily follow that egg products and their farmers protected by supply management are pocketing those benefits. The cost of energy and fertilizer has risen. Transportation costs will always be added expense in a country as far-flung as Canada. And it's certainly possible that some grocers are acting opportunistically to jack up some retail prices. What is certain is that supply management is playing some sort of a role, and that the Commons Agricultural Committee should scrutinize that role as part of its inquiry into food inflation. How, for instance, did the Dairy Marketing Board, run by 4 dairy farmers, calculate its increase, including an extraordinary emergency rise last fall? Sylvain Cherbois, director of the Agri-Food Analytics Lab at Dalhousie University, argues that the decisions of the Dairy Board, among others, should be spelled out in the detail for the public. Professor Charlebois contends that governance needs to be changed as well, ending the spectacle of dairy industry deciding how customers can best benefit the dairy industry. There should be a broader debate about the benefits of supply management as a policy to keep the family farm intact. Supply management has been a notable failure, since without some sort of market restrictions, the dairy industry, at the very least, would be unlikely to hold out against U.S. competitors with lower energy costs and greater economies of scale. Professor Charlebois and others believe that the system can be reformed with greater but still circumscribed exposure to competition that would spur more innovation. I mean, they sure don't mind forcing these hardships on Canadians to innovate their way away from fossil fuels. Like, they just make life unbearable for the rest of us and expect us to come up with solutions. But when it comes to these rich guys, they won't put that pressure of exposure to competition on them. They won't make them come up with solutions. No, they're all in bed together, and it's up to us to make it work. We pay the higher prices. It may be the Canadians, and that's not leadership, folks. That's not leadership, not by a long stretch. Leaders are there to facilitate solutions for their subordinates. Your whole task as a leader is to facilitate their tasks. And do you think that life in Canada is being facilitated right now? I don't think so. That's not leadership. It may be the Canadians, fully informed, will agree that the benefits of supply management outweigh the costs. But that overdue debate needs to start with recognition that Canadian consumers pay that bill. Yes, thank you. So that's a nice concession, I think, from the leftist Globe and Fail bailout media. I mean, the government is in bed with these monopolies, and they're paying for their financing, their elections and stuff like this. So they're all kind of in it together. And this, what we have right now, I think, is a kind of an organic form of fascism that is formed in Canada. Fascism being the lucrative merger of corporation and state. And that's what we see, even though it's kind of an unofficial merger in the culture where they're all just kind of in it together at the highest levels without any formal arrangements. But nevertheless, the impact to Canadians is still that we are living under fascism. Very much akin, I think, to Chinese communism, actually, which is really more fascistic than it is communist. Okay, and here we have some news from the troops here. This is the Epoch Times, and they're reporting that the Canadian military to screen applicants for symbols linked to problematic attitudes. So problematic attitudes are non-leftist attitudes. I really saw this ramping up my last few years in the military there. Where they were publishing these reports on things like RWE, which is right-wing extremism. Go ahead and try to name me like the last right-wing extremist attack in Canada, or who the most prominent right-wing extremist organization is in Canada, or anything like this. Of course, right-wing extremism, as I show in another video there, the quick cut, the politics of genocide. You see, extremism on the right has been the definition has been expanded in academia to include right-wing memes online and online harms and blah, blah, blah. But it's just criticism of the government. It's individualistic wrongthink. So this is a continuance of the purge that we saw from the vaccine mandate. And I got off this crazy train when they brought in the critical race theory. I said to my superior at that time, it was one of those things where it's like, yeah, okay, well, you're not going any further in your career if you don't get out there and gaslight those troops into thinking that they're racist and tell them that they're terrible. And I was like, yeah, well, that's fine. I don't want it this way. It matters to me how I get there. So no, thanks. I'm out. And that was the end for me. I mean, it is a gaslighting, psychologically abusive campaign that really wears people down over time. People like me who actually give a damn about the country and about the military. But the guys at the highest levels, the only thing that they care about is their careers. Okay, and that's what it said in the report about Somalia. in the report into Somalia about those guys, is that they're naked careerists who will say anything to get what they want. Okay, to further its cultural transformation, the Canadian Armed Forces, CAF, seeks to screen individuals before or after recruitment for, quote, problematic attitudes, close quote, by using new tools, including a database of symbols built with outside expertise. Wonderful. Outside expertise. So Canadian Anti-Hate Network, probably. Symbology database was created and will be continually updated in consultation with or outsourced to external experts to increase CAF recruiters' awareness of extremist, racist, discriminatory, or hateful conduct or other unacceptable attitudes that are displayed through applicant tattoos or body adornments, close quote. The organization wrote in its December response to Louis Arbour's report. Louis Arbour is the Supreme Court Justice who wrote a report on sexual misconduct into the CAF. And you know what? I haven't even read the report. I read the previous one they did in 2015 with Chief Justice Marie Deschamps. And it's a bunch of, it's just a bunch of gobbledygook, leftist nonsense, social justice warrior crap for the most part. And guess what? The chain of command didn't really put any stock in anything that she said, because when she said that we needed to improve our training, the whole section on training said no more death by PowerPoint. And we need to employ experts and properly train people instead of just giving them a PowerPoint and getting them to go read it in front of the squadron once a year for 10 minutes. And then after 2 whole years, they had to come up with a training plan on the basis of the recommendations for the report. What did they do? But they put a PowerPoint up on the defense network and said, just get somebody from the unit to download that and go read it to everybody. Well done, everybody. I can see that they're really taking this stuff very seriously. They're not, though. That's the thing. They don't take it seriously, and there is no capacity for introspection at the highest levels to ask, like, what have we been doing wrong for the last 30 years, the people in charge, that has the Canadian Armed Forces in such disarray. And it's just a hollow husk of its former self. We fought the 2 world wars and Korea. No, I don't believe that what we have there now is the same military that it was back then. Not even close. So this is about ideological conformity. Okay, they got to have total ideological homogeneity, just like in Stalinist Russia. So they're purging the ranks of any potential dissidents to the wokeness dogma, and they're looking for blasphemers here, right? Because it's a cult. Okay, this was specifically addressed in recommendation 22 of the report, which states that, quote, CAF should put new processes in place to ensure that problematic attitudes and cultural gender-based attitudes are both assessed and appropriately dealt with at an early stage, either pre or post recruitment. Now, this is part of a broader narrative that they're always pushing when we go to these town halls and stuff like that. They're always saying that it's the young people that are coming into the ranks today that are more racist than the boomers used to be. But I never heard the N-word in my entire career, 20 years. I never heard anybody drop the N-word. The only time I ever heard a soldier doing that was when I went back and watched those tapes from Somalia. So as far as I can tell, this is all projection and scapegoating. The report identified the issues, but said, quote, questions remain about ways to screen for inappropriate or dangerous beliefs, morals, and cultural views. So they're basically saying that Canadians are terrible, right? Like Canadians are hateful, terrible, racist, sexist people. And we need to put we need to kind of bolster the safeguards that are already in place in the screening process to make sure that we screen for ideological dissidents. Arbour, a former judge of the Supreme Court, has been tasked with conducting a review of the CAF, which, with regards to sexual and other types of misconduct, the report was tabled in May of 2022. Defense Minister Anita Anand said in December her department accepted all of the report's 48 recommendations, that the implementation work has started on 17 of them. Same thing they did last time. It was 10 recommendations last time, and they said, oh, yes, we accept all of them. And I watched them, too, because they would announce when when we met this one and when we met that one. And I'm looking at like just the last few, they were kind of phoning it in, there was no real, the big one I was watching for was, where's the policy that says you're not allowed to date somebody that's a lower rank than you? Or, well, what they said is that you have to disclose it to your chain of command. If you're dating somebody that's a lower rank than you, even if they're not in your chain of command, if they're a different trade, if they're working somewhere else on the base or on another base somewhere else, you're supposed to disclose it to your chain of command. And we're all looking at General Jonathan Vance, like, when are you going to put that policy in place there, Vance. And what do you know? He never did put that in place. And then all the revelations come out about him that he is probably one of the worst offenders out there. Spent his entire career using his own staff officers for Kleenex while scapegoating lower ranks for his own sexual malfeasance. Okay, back to the article. Okay, while the DND said in its December response that the symbology data set has been created, the department now says it is more in an embryonic phase. Quote, work on the symbology data set is preliminary at this point in time, close quote, spokesperson Derek Abna told the Epoch Times. DND would not share the work that's been done so far and could not provide a timeline for when it will enter use to screen applicants and recently accepted members. Quote, many details about how it will be developed, including which external experts will be consulted or outsourced, are still to be determined, said Abna. Improving screening to detect the actual neo-Nazis or terrorist sympathizers will protect the organization, but the issue can become very political if the frame of reference is built on the government of the day's list of what is considered acceptable views and what isn't. Attempts by the Liberal government to regulate what is considered unsavory has been met with criticism and has also backfired recently. Heritage Canada had hired consultant Laith Maroof and his group Community Media Advocacy Centre, CMAC, to conduct anti-racism workshops. Wonderful. So Laith Maroof, he's the anti-Semite who's been smearing Canadians as being some of the worst Nazis on the planet. Who is the Nazi organization? Like, let's see this. So Maroof was revealed to be himself to be a virulent anti-Semite, calling Jews bags of human feces. Yeah, great guy. Huh? The federal government also funded an quote, anti-racism, close quote, toolkit for schools that Conservative MP Leslyn Lewis called shockingly hateful. I would agree. I haven't even seen this, but the stuff that I did see coming into the military, it was just absolutely disparaging of any pro-Western view. And that's what anti-hate really means. It means anti-Western. If you express, a pro-Canada, pro-Western, proud of my heritage, proud of my history kind of view, that's what they're talking about. They're going to go after you for hate, which is just, Westernism. The toolkit says that Canada's former flag, the red ensign, is, quote, hate-promoting symbol, close quote, and that alt-right white nationalists, quote, sometimes attempt to infiltrate mainstream conservative political parties to influence change, close quote. Show me, what is the threat here? And this is the problem that I see at the highest levels across the board, is everybody's always talking about could. It was the same thing when I was at NDHQ in Ottawa, all around the boardroom table. It's just like could. Oh, that's the could that feels good. That feel good to you guys? Yeah, it's feeling good. Yeah. And then I'll just come in there like with it. And they're like, oh, you what's with the grenade, man? And I'll be like, it's not a grenade, guys. It's just the first empirical claim of the meeting. The thing about the red ensign, now we fought 2 world wars under that flag. It's kind of a relic of the British Empire, of Canada as being a British colony and stuff like that. And they went with the maple leaf instead. I forget who did that. What's the guy's name? But I don't know, man. I'm kind of advocating for a return to the red ensign at this point because of Western alienation, I would say, more so than anything. There's not a maple leaf anywhere west of the Manitoba border. So pretty sure we know who they really mean in Upper Canada when they say Canadians. And that's what I find when I hear Justin Trudeau use the word Canadians. He says, Canadians think this and Canadians think that. That's what he means, is he means Upper Canadians, as in the Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa corridor, the Laurentian elites. So if you don't think like the Laurentian elites, then you're not Canadian. But the red ensign, like I said, I think we fought Korea under that one too. And to say that it's somehow a hate promoting symbol is to attack, our heritage in Canada. And that's part of the PSYOP. They're going to attack everything about our culture. And the whole game here is, it's just like the cults do, right? It's about gaslighting. A cult is going to tell you, that you're bad, you're hateful, your nature is sinful, and the culture and the culture and the life that you knew before, like you need to cast that off, give yourself over to the one true faith, learn at the feet of the master in order to be a good person. And that's what they're doing, is they're trying to get us to reject our culture. It's Maoist, right? It's a Maoist tactic, trying to get us to reject our culture, our old life, cast off everything about it, including capitalism. And then they can come in with the one fix all solution of Chinese communism. Yeah. Okay. Maoism in particular. Okay. Quote, yes, I have encountered racists in my life, but believe me, racists have no particular party affiliation, close quote, Lewis said. So that's Leslie Lewis. The federal government provided $268,400 to the Canadian Anti-Hate Network to help with its project. Wonderful. So that's Bernie Faber, and they lie about Canadians and make us out to be the most hateful people on the planet, when in fact we are very likely the least racist society that has ever existed. So it's all absurd on its face, but at the same time, it's absolutely chilling. It's terrifying to think of where this is headed. It's all very Stalinist in nature. Okay, and as if we needed any more reason to be concerned, we have the gun roundup starts in PEI. So this is related to Bill C-21, and they haven't even passed Bill C-21, and they're already starting the theft of private property in PEI. And why are they starting in PEI? Well, because they're soft targets for authoritarians. So here is this is Blacklock's reporter, by the way. I don't have a subscription. I should probably buy one. Cabinet this year proposes to launch its long-promised national buyback of prohibited firearms starting in Prince Edward Island, according to a federal memo. Islanders own few guns and represent a low, quote, risk assessment, close quote, before RCMP can expand the program nationwide, it said. Quote, Prince Edward Island will be used as a pilot, close quote. So, yeah, that's what they're doing. They're going after the softest target first. It's PEI because they're a small population, and they may not have as pro-gun a culture as some of the other Atlantic provinces might, and definitely not as much as, say, Alberta, Saskatchewan, the Western provinces. So I think they're going to be, like, this is the pilot. They're really trying this out here to see how successful they can be. And just bear in mind that I think this pressure is coming from, well, I think we all agree this is coming from international organizations. And the big target here, the big fish for the global authoritarian movement, of course, is the United States. And the Second Amendment is the legal framework by which the United States is set up as the last ditch on earth from which free men may one day stand against global tyranny. So they need to kind of pull that rug out from under them, and they're going to start testing their strategy for widespread theft and confiscation of firearms, so people can't protect themselves and can't eat without the state. That's all rolling out in PEI. So, and they haven't even passed the legislation yet. So this is pretty crazy stuff. Okay, so here's Jordan Peterson had, well, not Jordan Peterson had, but there was an event, a protest to support Jordan Peterson there in Toronto yesterday, and Maxime Bernier showed up there. He had some comments. He's the only politician, of course, to show up in any of this stuff that's freedom oriented. I'm not trying to promote PPC on this channel or anything like that. I am a PPC member, so I try to be candid about that, so you guys understand where I'm coming from, and I'm not trying to play any trick on you. You know, I have my biases too. I'm just letting you know what they are. But here's Maxime Bernier on the Jordan Peterson issue.
You know, freedom of expression is part of our Charter of Rights, Section 2B. So we must promote it. We must defend our freedom to speak. And I don't understand why establishment politicians are not doing that. Are they afraid? Are they afraid of Canadians? If you are a strong Canadian, you must stand up and speak out for what you believe. And I'm doing that here today. It's too bad that Polyev is not here today. But I'm here to fight like I was with them when we had that freedom convoy. At that time, Polyev was not there because it was not popular to speak for freedom. And for us, what is the most important? It is not what is popular, like the conservatives and Pierre Polyev. It is what is right. And we will always do the battle for what is right for Canadians. popular or not. You know, freedom of expression, it's part of our Charter of Rights.
Okay. It's been a while since I had a troll in here, guys, because they're throttling the hell out of us. But Justin says, your parody of a MAGA mentalist is superb. You really sound like one of those cult loons. Thank you so much. I am laughing so hard. My sides hurt. Yeah, that's all projection, man. You're the one in the cult. You just think whatever the TV tells you to think, and somehow that makes you virtuous. But really, you just lack the courage to confront the harsh truths. Yeah, I mean, if anybody wants to come on here and tell me where I'm going wrong exactly, I'm all ears. You know, this is the kind of infantile, like high school type stuff. It's totally just to insult me, attack the individual and not attack the ideas. You know, they can't engage in any kind of adult conversation about the issues because they're in a cult. So thanks for showing us that there, Justin, you're a child. Okay. But I mean, hit me up. You want to come on this program sometime and show me, show us all what a hypocrite I am and where I'm going wrong on all this stuff. Then I'll be happy to take your ass to school. So here we have Kevin, Humanity. People are waking up. Brazil is asking, where is the source code for the voting machines? Great question. How come all of these people that are WAF and always seem disliked keep winning elections? Very odd. Yeah. So this is their January 6th down there in Brazil. As I've said before, January 6th in the United States was a false flag. A lot of that is starting to come out now that the House has been taken by the Republicans. They're going to be, they just announced yesterday, like Hannity had, man, I should have pulled that in here actually, now that I think about it, but Hannity did a town hall where he brought a lot of these lawmakers in there and started asking them, you know, about where they're going to drain the swamp at this point. And they're standing up real committees, not these you know, fake kabuki theater type committees that they've done so far, which are just witch hunts against Donald Trump. They're going to do a real live committee where they're going to be asking, you know, hey, who is this Ray Epps boomer character who incited the riot anyway? And what are his connections to the FBI? Because the whole thing really was orchestrated by the security establishment at the behest of Nazi Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. Anyway, we're going to be seeing a lot of that coming out of the next few months. And just look at this. Look at this. Right here, they're holding a huge banner. It says, we want the source code. They want to know exactly what's going on with these Dominion voting machines. And, you know, I can't say for sure that there's something nefarious going on there. Nobody can. But the problem is nobody knows. So how are we supposed to verify our elections? We just have to take these machines' words for it. You know, the only way to really provide the kind of transparency that's required in order to assure the security of our elections is if we have the source code, if we can see how the machines work and how they tally the votes.
O Supremo é o povo.
There you go. Now this is massive. It's a really incredible thing that's happening in Brazil right now. So we'll be sure to keep an eye on that. They're not putting up with any of this stuff. And oh, here we go. Oh no, this my computer is freezing up on me again. I gotta do something about this sucker. She's frozen. Well, not frozen, but I skipped a couple of tabs, I think. Okay. So here is a tweet from hashtag #FirstThemNews or #FirstThemNews. I don't really know who these guys are. I always say, like, I just try to show what people are talking about in here. I'm not a regular follower, really, of any of the media outlets that I show. But here is this grassroots mom standing up to gender ideology in her child's life.
The school district now is a freaking nightmare. I go to enroll my child, and my kiddo is standing right there. I hand them the birth certificate, and I say, see right here, this is his sex. He is a boy. He goes by he, him. I've had no issues at his past school, and I don't expect to have any issues here. And I swear it was like Karen, the transphobic secretary, was just waiting on us that day. She said she wouldn't put my child in the school system as his name because it has to match a birth certificate. But again, had no issues at the last school. I told her I absolutely would not enroll my child as a female. And she said, you will and you are. She enrolled my child as a female, then sent mail to my house with my child's dead name on it. At this point, my child is supposed to start school on Monday and is enrolled in the system as a female. Every single teacher in the school knew about my child, and the students were told a little girl was coming to class. This is a visual representation of my mood. Like and follow for part 3. The school district now is a freaking nightmare.
Okay, so I actually said that wrong when we were going into this. She's not standing up to the transgender ideology. It's she's promoting it, but it is the school who is, refusing to enroll this child under their trans name and trans identity. So I think it's interesting to see these signs of things. The tide is turning. And here we have, again, I don't really know who these guys are, but this was kind of making its way around the Twitterverse. And this is the BFD. I don't know who they are, but New Zealand, it says. I thought my 4-year-old was transgender. I was wrong. We raised both our sons as gender neutral as possible with gender neutral clothes, toys, and language. It was a mistake. So this is just somebody's viewpoint. And here it is. I was a true believer. I was a social justice organizer and facilitator before social justice overtook the world. I was on the forefront introducing the concept of intersectionality to progressive organizations and having people share their pronouns. My friends and I felt we were the cool kids and the vanguard of revolutionary work to change the world, to achieve what people in the social justice movement call, quote, collective liberation, close quote. I was deeply committed to the work of creating another world that was possible. Within this context, I came out as a lesbian and I identified as queer. And then I fell in love, entered a committed relationship with my spouse, and gave birth to our first son. 2 years later, my partner gave birth to our second son. Having children and experiencing the absolutely life-changing love and devotion to them was a game changer for me. And it was when, to quote Helen Joyce's subtitle, ideology began to meet reality. I immediately began to feel the tensions inside me between what I felt intuitively and instinctively as a mother and what I, quote, should, close quote, be doing as a white anti-racist social justice parent. Because of my own experiences of perceived victimhood with my own parents' rejection of my sexuality, I wanted to make sure I would honor my children's, quote, authentic selves, close quote, as I was primed to look for any clues that might suggest they could be transgender. We raised both our sons as gender neutral as possible, the gender neutral clothes, toys, and language. We did use he, him pronouns, and others in their life called them boys. We did not call them boys or even tell them that they were boys. We made all our language gender neutral in everyday readings of our books or descriptions of people in our lives. We did not say man or woman. We said people. We thought we were doing the right and best thing, both for them and for the world. At an early age, we noticed that our first son was a bit different. He was highly sensitive and was extremely gifted. By about 3 years old, he started to orient more towards the females in his life than the males. Since he did not have the language, he would say, I like the mamas, close quote. Some of this difference we started to attribute to possibly being transgender. Instead of orienting him to the reality of his biological sex by telling him he was a boy, we wanted him to tell us if he felt he was a boy or a girl. As true believers, we thought that he could be transgender and that we were to, quote, follow his lead, close quote, to determine his true identity. So this is the practice of indulging children. And it is socially destructive practice based on my read of Strauss-Howe generational theory. That is the issue that we keep facing over and over and over again as a species. It's that the generation who fight the war to liberate us, the heroes who liberate us, they raise the next generation that tyrannizes us because they come back from the war, from the Second World War, and they indulge their children to think they're special and perfect in their own way, in every way. This is all the legacy of that commie bastard, Dr. Spock. So that's what happens, okay? When you indulge your children, they grow up to be senior leaders at some point in their lives, just due to changing demographics and natural attrition. And when you have people who were raised as indulged, they can do no wrong in their own minds, and they're effectively sociopaths at the highest levels. Okay. At the same time this ideology was shaping my view of my son, I was also taking a deep dive into the attachment and child development. This opened my eyes into understanding the nature of attachment as hierarchical and the fact that parents, not children, are meant to be in the lead. I began to struggle with the conflict between putting my child in the lead on gender and my deepening knowledge of my responsibility to lead and orient my child. Sadly, my commitment to ideology had the upper hand. At around 4 years old, my son began to ask me if he was a boy or a girl. Instead of telling him he was a boy, I told him he could choose. I didn't use those words. I thought I could be more sophisticated than that. I told him, quote, when babies are born with a penis, they are called boys. When babies are born with a vagina, they are called girls. But some babies who are born with a penis can be girls, and some babies with a vagina can be boys. It all depends on what you feel deep inside, close quote. He continued to ask me what he was, and I continued to repeat these lines. I resolved my inner conflict by, quote, leading, close quote, my son with this framework. You can be born with a penis, but still be a girl inside. I thought I was doing the right thing for him and for the world. His question and my response to it would come back to haunt me for years and continues to haunt me now. What I know now is that I was, quote, leading, close quote, I was leading my innocent, sensitive child down a path of lies that were a direct on-ramp to psychological damage and lifelong, irreversible medical intervention, all in the name of love, acceptance, and liberation. So if it feels good, then it is good. And that's what you get when you indulge children. And as we can see at the highest levels, like, even like when Chrystia Freeland talks, I think she genuinely believes that she is, pure of heart. And if anybody's got any kind of an issue with anything that they're doing, then there must be something wrong with them. And that's what we see. I think in the default human state, is that we're born sociopaths, and it is our parents' discipline, carefully applied during toddlerhood, that really makes the difference. According to Freud, anyway, that's how the superego is installed. The superego is the extra ego, the extra personality, the one that we can't really peer into or read the thoughts of. It's just the one that, it's like the all-seeing eye, the one who watches us while we masturbate and chastises us for looking at that girl who's too young, that kind of thing. And this really is, I think, a part of the religious impulse as well. It's we kind of have that father figure installed in our minds that keeps us on the up and up and has us second guessing ourselves all the time. It leads to a lot of anxiety, and when it gets out of control, we end up with disorders like anorexia. Jordan Peterson talks about this pernicious, malevolent superego that just won't let anorexics get any kind of peace with respect to their body image. So it can be a very unhealthy thing, but it's kind of a necessary trauma that we inflict on our toddlers in order to make them into good people. And that doesn't happen, actually, when you indulge children. So they turn out to be sociopaths without a conscience. That's what the superego is. It's effectively your conscience. Okay, with this one declaration, about 6 months after my son began to ask me if he was a boy or a girl, he told my spouse that he was a girl and wanted to be called sister, and she, her. I received a text message about this at work. On my way home that night, I resolved I would have to put all of my feelings away and support my transgender child, and that is what I did. With this one declaration, after months of refusing to tell our son he was a boy, we changed his entire world. We told him he could be a girl. He jumped up and down on the bed, happy, saying, quote, I'm a girl, close quote. What a relief it must have been to him to actually have an identity to hold on to. We, not him, initiated changing his name. We socially transitioned him and enforced his transition with his younger brother, who was only 2 years old at the time and who could barely pronounce his older brother's real name. When I look back at this, it's almost too much to write about. The grief and the shock of what we did is so deep, so wide, so sharp, and so penetrating. How could a mother do this to her child, to her children? I truly believe that what I was doing was, I truly believed that what I was doing was pure, right, good, only to later realize with horror what it could have led to for my child. This horror still shakes me to my core. It will not surprise readers of this site to hear that once we made the decision to socially transition our son, we received resounding praise for an affirmation from most of our peers. One of my friends who had also socially transitioned her young child assured me that social transition was healthy, neutral way of allowing children to, quote, explore, close quote, their gender identity before puberty, when decisions would need to be made about puberty blockers and hormones. Yeah, that's just sick. Okay, it gets me. The whole puberty blockers, the hormones, like they're sexually deranging the kids in schools systematically, and they've converted our what they call what used to be called. The autism clinics for people who are on the spectrum. They've converted them into these gender diversity clinics. And now they're deranging autistic children, essentially, autistic Asperger's children, to sort of fixate on this issue of gender. And they're turning them in, and then they send out these gender diversity clinics to stalk and groom them, call them on their phones and tell them to come in for appointments without their parents' knowledge, so they can continue grooming them to become pharmacological livestock to keep those stocks going up and up, and those pensions getting fatter, fatter, fatter. So it's all very it's very sick. When I look back at this, is almost too much to write about. The grief and shock. Okay, so I read that. It will not. Okay. At one of the support groups we attended, we were also told the transgender identity takes a few years to develop in children. They told us that during this period, it is very important to protect our child's transgender identity, and therefore you must eliminate contact with any family members or friends who do not support this identity or go along with it. This is a cult practice, isolation. Yes, the gender therapist running this parent support group said this, and at the time, I believed her. Looking back now, I see in a shockingly different light, this was an intentional process of concretizing transgender identity in children as young as 3 years old, the age of the youngest child in this group. When identity is concretized at this young of an age, children will grow up actually believing they're the opposite sex. How could medicalization not follow? So it's brainwashing, right? That's what they're doing. The therapist also employed the same script that many adolescents use on their parents, helping parents of transgender children script letters to grandparents, aunts, and uncles to declare a child's transgender identity and make conditions of engagement clear. You must use the name and pronouns and embrace the new identity, or you will not have contact with the child. And that is emotionally abusive. That's what they do. This is how they break up families and polarized all the people you love in your life against you. If you take a stand against this woke dogma and the transgender cult, well, that's heresy in the cult, and so you'll be accused of hate. Hate is the new heresy, and it's not a question of hate. It's just a question of what's real. What is reality, as far as I'm concerned, and it's not your feelings. Your feelings are not real. They are imaginary at the end of the day. After about a year of social transition for our older son, our younger son, who was only 3 years old, began to say he was a girl. This came as a complete shock to us. None of these things made our older son different were true for our younger son. He was more of a stereotypical boy and did not show the same affinity or feminine things or females that his older brother did. We began to look more deeply at his attachment again and realize that the drive for sameness is a primal attachment drive. And that's true. It's part of our survival instinct. We want to fit in, right? It's the tribe is absolutely essential for our survival. By and large, there are very few people who can kind of survive in the wilderness on their own. And so ostracization is and has been a very damaging, psychologically damaging kind of punishment that we've inflicted on people since time immemorial. And that's what they're doing, is they're inflicting a kind of psychological damage on the people that they ostracize, who love them in their lives. So it's all very polarizing and socially abusive. Okay, it says, we felt that this assertion of being a girl was likely a desire to be like his older sibling in order to feel connected to him. This assertion of being a girl became more insistent when both brothers went to school part-time. With a school program, they were included dispute they were in included sharing their pronouns. Why could the older sibling be a she when the younger sibling could not? Our younger son became more and more insistent, and we became more and more distressed. The ideology was crashing with reality and shaking what had felt like a solid ground. If our younger son was driven by attachment and wanted to be a girl, could our older son also have this as part of what drove him? An attachment drive to be the same as me? We made an appointment to see a gender therapist who we had met at the support group in order to discuss our younger son. We truly believed that she would be able to help us sort out whether or not he was actually transgender, to pick apart the nuances of what could be going on for him as a younger brother to a transgender older sister. And the only he in his family of she's. To our shock, the therapist immediately began to refer to him as she, stating that whatever pronouns the 3-year-old wants to use are the pronouns she will use to refer to them. She patronizingly assured us that it may take us more time to adjust, since parents have a hard time with this sort of thing. She expressed that it was transphobic to believe that there was anything wrong with our younger son wanting to be like his older transgender sibling. When I pushed back and asserted that I was not yet convinced our younger son was transgender, she told me that if I did not change his pronouns and honor his identity, he could develop an attachment disorder. And they don't know any of this stuff. They just say these things. They try to scare parents with this idea that you have to transition them or they'll commit suicide. And of course, the data is just not there to support any of that stuff. The suicide rates are the same, if not higher, between the pre-op and the post-op transgenders. And the only difference is, like, it doesn't do anything to alleviate suicidality. The only difference it really does is purportedly it alleviates the gender dysphoria. But of course, the other way to do that would be to just engage in talk therapy like we've been doing for decades for the problem of gender dysphoria. But no, the law in Canada is now, since they passed Bill C4 unanimously, as in 100% of the MPs voted for it, the law is now that if you take your gender dysphoric child to see a talk therapist in an effort to alleviate the dysphoria through therapy, then they will put you in jail. You must do as you're told when you're dealing with this cult, and they are in it to stalk and groom your vulnerable adolescent child for sacrifice of their virgin fertility on the altar of wokeness to the gods of boomer self-righteousness. So we were unconvinced, but again, we did not want, we wanted to do what was right for our son and for the world. We decided to tell him he could be a girl. And that night at dinner, we told him that we would call him she, her. Right after dinner, I went to play an imaginary game with him, and I wanted to be affirming. I put on a big, warm smile on my face and said, "Hi, my girl." At this, my younger son stopped, looked at me and said, "No, mama, don't call me that." His reaction was so clear, it made me stop. It pierced me to my core. I did not turn back after that. For the next 2 years, my partner and I dug deeper, agonized, and continued digging. Everything we thought we knew or believed that had led us to socially transition our older son began to unravel. I continued to study the attachment-based development approach, and I learned more about autism and hypersensitivity. We decided not to socially transition our younger son. We began to see clearly that not only our younger son was not transgender, but that our older son was likely not either. We knew we had to do something, but struggled to figure out how. All I wanted was to go back in time to undo what we had done, but I was still bound with the ideology. On the one hand, I felt clearer and clearer that my older son was not transgender and that we were responsible for leading him down a path by mistake. On the other hand, I worried that if he was actually transgender, I would do great damage to him by reversing the social transition. This period of time was deeply agonizing and was marked by incredible despair. It shouldn't be that agonizing in my personal view. I'm just going to say what I always say when we're dealing with these kinds of situations where some harm will result no matter what you do. The ethical choice is to choose the least harmful option, and the least harmful option is the one that doesn't result in your child becoming a permanent medical patient. And I've looked at the data on this back in the day and stuff like this. And the fact of the matter is that the follow-up studies that they do with people who express gender dysphoria as children and adolescents, they desist. These are phases that people go through by and large. And the one study that I always remember is when the older they are, when they follow up on these people, the higher the rate of desistance goes. And at age 23, the rate of desistance that I saw was at 88%. So 88% of the people who were identifying as transgender during their childhood and adolescence, 88% of those people will desist on their own by age 23. And I can't help but think like that if you go even higher than that to say age 24, then age 25, then you're probably going to be even closer to 100% by that point. And so it seems to me that we shouldn't be doing anything to these people until their brains are fully developed, which is about age 25. But that's just kind of my take on it based on the data that I've seen. That would be the least harmful option. So somehow my partner and I came to clarity that the deeper truth for our son was that he was not actually a transgender girl, but rather a highly sensitive, likely autistic boy who was born into this world without a skin and for whom the structure of certainty the girl identity provided him was a type of protection or defense. It also provided him a way of attaching to me through sameness, a primal need for his security in the world. We decided that since we were the ones who led him down this path, we were the ones that needed to lead him off it. A year ago, just before our son's 8th birthday, we did just that. And while the initial change was hard, incredibly hard, the most immediate and tangible emotion we felt from our son was relief, actual relief. In the days following my first conversation with him about going back to his birth name and pronouns, my conversation about how males cannot be females, and that we were wrong to tell him he could choose to be a girl, he was at first very mad at me, then sad. Then the next day, I felt my son rest. I felt him release a burden, lay this adult burden down that he, as a child, was never meant to carry. He felt incredible relief. He came to rest. And that is kind of the sad truth, I think, is that a lot of these activists end up exploiting their kids in order to show their fealty to the cult. Since that time, we have been healing. He has been healing. It was not easy, but my son is happy and thriving. We have watched him coming to a deeper peace with himself as a boy, and he is blossoming and growing. For now, he is safe, and as each day passes, he grows into himself more. As for our younger son, he is also happy, thriving, and healing. Once his older brother became his older brother again, he happily and almost immediately settled into his identity as a boy, a further validation of our insight into the primal attachment drives that were underneath his pursuit of sameness for so long. I fear for the future for a sensitive, feminine, socially awkward boy who has spent his early childhood years actually thinking he was a girl. I fear for what our culture, our institutions, his peers, and the internet will tell him. I fear the power that the state that seems hell-bent on destroying the parental-child relationship. No matter what the future holds, I will never stop fighting to protect my sons. I am no longer a true believer. This experience for me has felt like leaving a cult that would have me sacrifice my child to the gods of their gender ideology in the name of social justice and collective liberation. I have left this cult, and I am never turning back. Once a brick was pulled out of the wall holding up to this belief system, the rest of the bricks tumbled. Now I sort through the rubble, and I seek to slowly and carefully rebuild my values, my view of reality, my belief system, my relationship to myself, my children, and my understanding of the world. Whatever may emerge, the protection of my children will be the compass for every step on the road ahead. And I think that's a very good way to round that article out there. And it really is about confronting those harsh truths and accepting reality for what it is. You're never going to be able to solve problems in the real world unless you understand them. And the only way to understand them is to accept the real world as it is. There's an end note here. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to both the Fourth Wave Now blog and the Gender A Wider Lens podcast. I discovered both the night my partner had made a decision to change course with our son, and they have helped us immensely. Thank you for your courage. Okay, so they're getting some support, even coming out of the cult, which hopefully is starting to lose some of its influence. And here is what they call a detransitioner. So my understanding is that this is a natal male. That's the clinical term for somebody who is born male. So this is a clinical male who transitioned, and this is a very young person. And Andrew Smith is saying, concede nothing to gender ideology. Quote, gender affirmation care, close quote, is experimental root and branch. It's fundamentally malpractice. There's no such thing as accepted practices or standards for irreversible surgery on perfectly healthy reproductive organs. There you go. And it should be the case, if you're abiding in the Hippocratic Oath, which is to first do no harm, it should be the case that you don't intervene medically unless it's necessary. And to the benefit of the patient. So what exactly is the tangible benefit to the patient here? Well, they might feel a little less gender dysphoric, but not less suicidal if they go through this process, which is totally irreversible, and it's for life. So here is somebody who's actually been through this, speaking for themselves.
I'll never have my breast back. A reconstruction will do nothing for me, and it might make things worse, actually, because I've had some complications pop up this year with the grafts. I have to cover them up with bandages, or else they'll I don't know what's going on with them. I tried to consult my surgeon about it, and she didn't really investigate. He gave me advice that made the complications worse even, and actually temporarily gave me an infection. But I have to bandage up every day so that it doesn't like leak all over my clothing or bedding. And Jesus. From the hormones and blockers, I've been experiencing some joint pains, mainly in my arms, my legs, and my back. And I still have issues with my urinary tract. I have to use the restroom pretty frequently, and I didn't even know that this was possible. This is like a pretty huge quality of life issue that I'm experiencing, and I'm just not really getting any help for it. And on top of that, I do hate to speak about it, but I'm experiencing sexual dysfunction at the age of 18. That's something that women usually go through when they're in their 40s to 50s.
Right.
How was I supposed to know?
So let's talk for a moment about how you got your lawyers and where you are on the legal battlefront.
So not only is...
All right, so that's on the Jordan Peterson podcast if you want to check out the full interview. But as you can see, this is a human tragedy that's been inflicted on this poor person. And the part where, well, I don't know if they're going by he at this point, but I'll say he. Yeah, how is I supposed to know? Well, you were supposed to know because you're supposed to have sensible adults in your life looking out for you. And at this moment in our history, they are very few and far between. And it is the young people who are paying the price for all of this. I don't even know what to call it, but all of this religiosity, I guess. I'm not sure, but it's madness is what it is. It's sick. Okay, here's Liz Churchill, and she says on page 67 of the Pfizer documents, they stated, do not have skin contact, be in the same room, or even breathe if you've been vaccinated around pregnant women for a month. This is their own data, and this is Dr. Ryan Coyle with Vigilant Fox. So here we go.
If you follow the money and corporate interest, you bet. So if you follow the money instead of what should have been done for humanity, there should have been, as you may have heard me say today on stage, truth plus transparency equals trust. Did we get the truth from any of these companies? No. Were they transparent? Were our government agencies transparent? Absolutely not. Now that we see that data rolling out, where's our level of trust? We see how much they lied to us in the truth and the transparency category. And what they're doing is they're destroying the public's trust, not only now, but into the future of these types of agencies. This all needs to change. Any medical product, any vaccine needs an independent outside review board that has no government interest and no industry interest to be the truth teller from the outside looking in, an independent, non-biased third party. That didn't happen here. Why do they say, oh gosh, we thought it was safe for pregnant women? Pfizer's data already said on page 67, bottom of the page, it says, don't have skin contact with, don't be in the same room with, essentially don't breathe. If you've been vaccinated, avoid a pregnant woman for a month. I mean, their data said it. They knew it, very, very buried in their long application, but they knew there were risks to pregnant women. And yet they pushed forward this narrative of, oh, a shot in every arm, go for it.
So there you have it, folks. It all kind of goes back to the same money trail leading to Big Pharma. Yeah, I mean, it's some very serious damage, I think, that's been done to the social fabric here. How people are ever supposed to trust vaccines again is beyond me, especially with all the reporting now on how they want to start using this technology everywhere, including the flu vaccine. And it doesn't have anything to do with human health being the priority. It has everything to do with the profits being the priority. And since it's new technology, it's more profitable. And that's why we had the response that we had during the pandemic. They went with all the profitable options that they had just developed that were not part of any pandemic plan. Everything from the ventilators. We had our own boondoggle here in Canada where we were just giving money to Friends of the Liberals with startup companies to provide ventilators who had no experience in engineering anything, I don't think. And so they're just fleecing us. They're just looting the public coffers. Yeah, I mean, there needs to be some kind of a reckoning for this, legally speaking, peacefully. Okay, and here's Japan. The rest of the world is waking up to this too. So Japan, top doctors are now challenging the health authorities to investigate damage done to excess deaths. He's a bit pissed off. Good. And yeah, this is what we want to see. We want to see more people getting pissed off like this. I'll try to read the subtitles for the Japanese translation for anybody who might just be listening to this. Here we go. So Fukushima is saying, I am telling you, you got to conduct an investigation. A doctor can make a medical diagnosis simply by looking at such a piece of paper. Sorry, no doctor can make a medical diagnosis simply by looking at a piece of the paper. I'm saying that you must look at the medical records and do a proper investigation. There's no question about it. Stop the bad science and do the right science. That's enough. Looks like you're trying to destroy evidence. Do the right thing, or you're just going to have a criminal lawsuit. Enough is enough. I don't care what you say. No one is going to be convinced by the process or bullshit things that you were talking about. Person of the health ministry, well, of course, we will not only evaluate the results as they are, we are trying. Fukushima, you can't possibly have any way to evaluate. What you need, clinically speaking, is that You need to look at the medical records properly, look at the data, and do it properly and carefully, one case at a time. People's lives are at stake. And then the health ministry is saying back, yes, sir, we will make every effort to do so. Enough is enough. I have so many people here, but you are not getting anywhere. Lawmakers also came all the way here. You can't repeat this kind of thing. You should have started off in the beginning with a proper scientific light. No, immediately disband the ridiculous vaccine causality evaluation committee. Instead, set up an investigation committee to investigate all cases. And to do so, you need to get proper statisticians and some decent experts. Understand? Do some tests and investigations. As Dr. Sano said earlier, if you have examples of tissue, consider the process spiked protein. People are already doing research all over the world. Just Japan's prestige is at stake. Yeah, vaccinated so many people. And yet only 10% of the members of the Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare are leading the vaccine campaign have been vaccinated. Oh, God. So the people who are pushing this on the people of Japan are not taking the vaccine themselves. He just said 90% of them didn't. Okay, sorry. I'm just kind of getting a kick out of the Japanese. They're quite based, I find. First of all, you need to clarify this. Medically disband the vaccine casualty evaluation committee and investigate all of the cases. Must identify all deaths and unreported deaths in the investigation. Thousands and tens of thousands of lives are at stake. One more thing. We don't have any idea of the long-term side effects of this vaccine. I can't read all the words here, but nanoparticles taken into the body in huge quantities unceasingly produce spike proteins. People are still sick, still in bad physical condition. Some reason people suddenly get sick. For some reason, suddenly people's blood pressure rises. For some reason, people suddenly get eczema. Then we diagnose, we find spike protein. And the diagnosis is moving to the next phase. We need to stop vaccinating the, I'm just going to turn the sound off here. We need to stop vaccinating the immediate, we need to stop vaccinating immediately and take care of the health of all cases. That's what this scientific paper also says. You bring in people who don't have a proper understanding of the cutting edge science and okay, that's the end of it. So that's quite the rant that they're going on in Japan over there. Like I said, I do find them to be a bit based. They're not as social justice warrior as the rest of the developed world. They have like a zero immigration policy. I think they take in like 1 or 2 immigrants per year. They've decided that Japan is for the Japanese, and they recognize that demographics is destiny and that they have the same inverted population pyramid that we do here in the West, with the low birth rates coming after the boomer generation. And so there aren't enough young people to form the tax base required to fund a lot of the social programs for the aging population, but they're sticking to it. They've decided that they're just going to go down. This is how they're going to go out, and they're going out Japanese. So interesting to watch. Anyway, interesting to see how they're approaching this. Okay, and here we have rivals are us, hashtag DMG. So this is US rivals or us rivals. God keep our land glorious and free. Hashtag Trudeau national disgrace. So that was trending this morning, Trudeau national disgrace. And I'm seeing all of these Trudeau hashtags all the time. Like right over here, you can see in the sidebar, Trudeau is a psychopath. That has gotten very popular. And I was checking that out a little bit today, but there's not really much on there that we haven't already shown on this program. So, but anyway, this is a really nice video here. And so this is the hockey fans in Halifax. They sing "Oh Canada" without Trudeau's woke changes. And there you go. It really does seem to be the case that the one principle that unites us all across Canada is our shared hatred of Justin Trudeau. So, and the lines that he tried to change there, or that were officially changed, that we've been ordered to sing now, were "All thy sons command," and "All thy sons command" is a reference to the World Wars. Thy sons being thy veterans, thy officers, so true patriot love and all thy sons command. That means to say that everybody out there on the battlefield is there, for the right reasons. It's out of the true patriot love that we all feel for the civilization that we've been so fortunate to inherit. And that's really where that feeling of a duty of service comes from, to give something back. And so it's a reference to military service, to the veterans of the world wars. And when they command troops onto the battlefield, it's not because we hate what's in front of us. It's because we love what's behind us, and that's what that line is supposed to convey, in my personal view. And the other one was the God keep our land, and I think they tried to change that to please keep our land. Who are we asking to keep our land when we say please keep our land? So I don't know who we're trying to appeal there. And the God keep our land, like I've said before on the podcast, I've been a loud and proud atheist my whole life. And I see God in the Constitution. I see God, in the national anthem. And, there was a period in my life where I felt like that was a little bit exclusive for it was a little bit exclusive to the religious, but nowadays I just kind of see it as when I see God somewhere, I just take it to mean goodness, the goodness. So I think that's basically what we talk about when we say that there's a higher principle than the Constitution, the supremacy of God. It's kind of like the supremacy of the goodness, the ultimate goodness, and that's really just a Platonic view on God. That's what Plato. That's the tack that Plato took way back in the day. Is that when he said God, he just meant like the ultimate good. So I'm content with that nowadays. I think it is kind of it's really important to understand our heritage so that we can appreciate just what it takes to get us to this point, the kind of hard-won battles that our ancestors fought, and these freedoms and these liberties. These are the legacy of the fallen, and an awful lot of good people. Certainly sacrificed a tremendous amount so that we could have a brighter future. And so it's really important to honor that sacrifice. And standing on guard for thee, well, we haven't done such a great job of that lately. I mean, I've often said that all those boys over in Europe must be rolling in their graves right now with the way our elites have been wiping their asses with their great legacy. But it is nice to see that I'm not alone in thinking that. I think that more people are waking up to this all the time, and this is definitely a strong side that the tide is starting to turn in our favor here, guys. So that's a good way to kind of end things off for us today, I think. Like I said, this is there are all kinds of signs that things they're opening up out there. We still have some really hard battles ahead of us. I keep saying that this is a war. It's not a single battle. We're not going to win this war in a single battle. And I know that a lot of people are really kind of being pushed to the brink right now with a lot of setbacks that we're facing in the movement out there right now, at least as far as insofar as organizing protests and things like that go. But they're just that. They're just setbacks, and we gotta keep a cool head about us and stop focusing on all of the ways in which we don't work well together, and start focusing on all the ways in which we do work well together. And I don't think in the freedom movement we're going to be able to get all these independently minded people to conform to a certain ideological perspective or even a certain plan. I think that leaders out there in the movement need to be very cognizant of that, and try to appeal to the better angels of people's nature, and understand that they're not going to be 100% on board with everything you do. But that doesn't mean that we can't accomplish great things, because our ancestors have been doing it forever. And this is a fourth turning. It's a very natural cycle of history that the ancients referred to as the saeculum, which is approximately one long human lifetime. And the saeculum always ends with a great crisis that is at least perceived to have the potential to threaten the continued existence of the civilization. And so that's where we are right now. It's the kind of thing that our ancestors always warned us we would someday have to face, and we have a duty to kind of rise up to stem the tide of global tyranny, and that time is now. And even though we've had some challenges kind of getting the movement off the ground, obviously the trucker convoy was a watershed moment that we just can't express enough gratitude to the truckers for providing to the rest of us, to show us all that we're not alone. And now that we know that we're not alone, like I've said before, I don't think that the mass gatherings is necessarily a winning strategy for us at this point. And it seems like a lot of people are kind of spending a lot of emotional capital and a lot of time on some of these events that maybe perhaps don't have clear, tangible goals, but it's more about the emotional experience. And I'm always saying, okay, guys, like, we're in the war, stay frosty, strip the emotions out of it. It is what it is. You got to accept it for what it is. And you can't be emotional and rational at the same time. And the game here is to mount a response and not a reaction. A reaction being an emotional reaction, and a response being an intelligent or a logical response. And you cannot be rational and emotional at the same time. So instead of engaging with those emotions, especially the negative ones, you can kind of take a step back and just let them be. Let that waterfall, that tide of emotion, kind of wash over your consciousness, and just take a step back. Take a step back behind the waterfall and just let it all run by. You don't have to get washed away in it. You really don't. So I'm just going to throw to a couple of comments before we sign off here. Ken is saying, God set the rules, we just follow. No emotions needed. Fair enough. It really depends, in my view, on which one of the 147-ish versions of the Bible you want to discuss, or any number of other religious documents for that matter. But I'm willing to look at a lot of this stuff as our ancient ancestors' first attempts at philosophy, and at like we hadn't really parsed out the different disciplines of philosophy that we now call academia, where we have all these specialties and stuff like that. So really, like in the old time state, you had just basically two kinds of elites. One was a bureaucrat, and another one was an academician, I guess. And in academia, they hadn't really parsed out all these different disciplines. And so we tend to see these stories represented as, metaphorical and anthropomorphizations of celestial events and stuff like that. But I do think that what they're trying to do is they're trying to conserve events in these stories so that we can analyze them and hopefully take the lessons from them. And that's kind of what I see when I go back over, at least over the Western traditions, is it's a series of fourth turnings. There are a lot of fourth turnings described in the Bible, everything from the Garden of Eden to Sodom and Gomorrah, to the arrival of Jesus on the scene. If my application of the theory is correct, then that seems to be what they're doing. Is they're cataloging these crises eras to try to understand why it's happening. And of course, no generation gets to eliminate all of the problems faced by humanity. A lot of these problems have to be left for future generations to deal with. That's something that Thomas Jefferson even talked about when he was writing about his failure to get slavery abolished at the establishment of the United States. So what else we got here? We got right, wrong, good and evil. Yeah, I can get on board with that kind of thing. And my metric for the good is the flourishing of conscious creatures. So that which is most conducive to the flourishing of conscious creatures, especially humans, is the good. And a conscious decision to inflict suffering on a conscious creature is evil. Especially when it's needlessly so. I'm not talking about those situations where some harm will result no matter what, but inflicting a needless suffering on a conscious creature, I would say, is evil. So let's see. We have, please don't confuse God with religion. God is within you, not in a church. And I think that's very much in line with what Jesus used to say. It's heaven is in the heart. I think it's in the mind. I would say that heaven is in the mind and hell is in the heart. The heart is dark, folks. It's a lot darker than people are willing to admit. Human nature it has some very darker elements about it. I think by default, humans are essentially exploiters of their fellow man, and it takes effort to overcome the lowly stamps of our origins, as Darwin may have put it. And I have some God bless. Thank you very much, Jeff. And pro patron, non-compliance is the strategy. And Colleen is saying, very well said. It's amazing, isn't it? I'm not sure which comment that was in reference to, but it's all good. And I saw even one or two new viewers in here, so that's Really good to see. And just so you're aware, we're being throttled on Facebook, and I think we're still under a suspension with YouTube, so we haven't been streaming there in a while. So we're trying to draw everybody over onto our Rumble channel at this point. So we're just over on these other platforms to try to steal viewers. And if you want to get the unmitigated, unabashed truth, it's going to be over there on Rumble right now. So please give us a follow over there. And I'll say for now, folks, we're coming up on the 2-hour mark. So at least I'm under that mark today. And I'll keep trying to tighten this up a little bit for you guys, but there's always so much to say, so much. Thanks for staying with me, and stay frosty and stay safe out there, troops.